Hi, folks. It's Pia again from the Koalas, and today we'll talk about planning. So, planning of the upcoming sprint. As per book, there are basically three topics you should tackle during a planning. And that's first, defining a common sprint goal. It's second, creating the sprint backlog. And it's third, draft the plan or at least exchange some first ideas on how to implement the various sprint items. I again had a very interesting and vivid discussion about this with my two colleagues, Andy and Rodrigo. I think you shouldn't miss it, so come on and check it out. Hi, folks. Welcome back to our series where the koalas go through the development life cycle. So our topic today is planning. So last time we talked about the refinement and that the team, gets a common understanding of what should be done, what should be implemented, and now it's time for planning. So I looked a little bit into, the official Scrum guide, and basically what's mentioned there is in the planning there are three like main topics or activities you should do or you should discuss about, and one is the sprint goal. The second is creating a sprint backlog. And the third is make a plan on how to implement the next product increment. So everything that's in your sprint backlog. So first for the sprint goal, and maybe just a side note from my experience, I very, very few times I've seen a sprint goal being created and decided on among the whole team. So I'm really curious about your experiences, Andy and Rodrigo. So a sprint goal, why is the sprint valuable? What do we want to achieve as a team? And if we have such a goal, how do we deal with what I've seen very often, stories or things we need to do in the upcoming sprint, but they come from different areas. So they're not, tackling the same like area or topic. So how does that work together with having like one sprint goal? Yeah, and both are nodding. I see both of you have already some thoughts in your minds. And I think we start with Andy today.
I think the point you mentioned about sprint goal, I really have the same impression as you. A lot of the peers don't do that, and most of the teams don't see the value in it. I can just say from experience that it really helps to have a PO who has a very clear roadmap, how product increments should be delivered, on which topics you should set focuses. And with that, just a natural sprint goal comes out of it. And it's really helpful also for developers, as Rodrigo probably would add, because it couldn't be worse than have like 8 different areas in the application you touch within one sprint within the same team. The amount of time you lose for like offboarding and context switching, it's just immense what you lose in terms of efficiency and progress. So I think having a sprint goal, having the focus of the team towards that goal, and plan some sort of contingency, which you also can use then perhaps for technical depths and so on, is really helpful.
Yeah, I agree completely with you there. Like, unfortunately for me, it's always been very rare to work with a product owner like skilled enough, if it's fair to say that, to organize the product backlog in a smart way, so that whenever we're doing the planning, we're picking things from the top, kind of a general theme emerges naturally, and then we look at it and say, yeah, that's the goal, we need to implement this thing. And then this is helpful for developers, because plans change, right? That's why we have daily meetings to evaluate if our plan is going according to what was planned, right? And then having a clear vision of the goal helps us move faster and adapt our plan. And that's extremely valuable, but also extremely rare. The ones, the examples of that I've seen, it's like stabilize feature XYZ, something like that. So that was the best I could see recently, which is a shame, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that that's also, yeah, unfortunately, the experience I made. But yeah, we are positive for the future. Andy, you wanted to add something?
Well, not to that specific point. I would continue with the plan actually, to create a plan on how to tackle the sprint and how to tackle the story. And finally, that's the second point, which I believe most teams don't do at all, or have a very wrong understanding what that entails. What I see a lot is that just every story is assigned to a person at the beginning of the sprint, and then they check availability and say, yeah, that works out, but doesn't have in mind some like dependencies within the stories, or when something bad happens on one end, then it screws over the whole plan and everything is running around like chickens. So I think, I mean, you're laughing, but I saw that. I experienced it. I was one of the chickens as well. So retrospectively, I think it really helped when you just create a plan and check that you have the skills to tackle the sprint you would like to have, or the achievements you would like to have, that the skills are within the team. And for sure, of course, in theory, everyone should be able to do everything. We also agree that sometimes it makes more sense when certain people actually takes the responsibility of certain topics due to its importance and a risk also entails. And I think to assign the initial story for each person is perfectly valid, but I think it's much more important to check all of the stories. Are they dependent or not? And there have a look at it to optimize, to really have those doesn't have that pitfall of, yeah, it makes sense and everything lines up very well, but if you then have that one story which everything depends on, you can screw your planning as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that sounds super crazy to me, what you just described. I can't believe it. But yeah, I believe you that happens out there, unfortunately. Looking back at like the second like main thing you should do in the planning is like really creating a sprint backlog. And like this is like happening like before what you just described, or I would assume that should happen before anyone gets assigned to a certain task or story, whatever. So the creation of the sprint backlog, what's your wish, or how do you see it? Who should create the sprint backlog? And it's really the sprint, not the overall backlog. It's the sprint backlog of the upcoming sprint. Who decides the scope? So what goes into the sprint, and who decides on the priorities? And I'm really interested in like Rodrigo's experience there, and then maybe Andy can add his point of views.
Yeah, I think it's a negotiation, right? It's a negotiation between the developers and the product owner, because the product owner, given that he may not be technical, he may not see dependencies, as it was very well pointed out by Andy. But on the other side of dependencies, there may be synergies, right? So let's say we have capacity to grab the first 10 product backlog items, right? But let's say that the 11th has a lot of synergies with the third, right? So we may just decide, okay, let's not take the 10th and then instead take the 11th, because then we'll be able to deliver a bigger increment of value to our product. So this kind of negotiation, I think it's very important to happen during the planning, when we are collaborating in building the sprint backlog. And the sprint backlog should be something that the team feels confident that they are able to deliver by the end of the sprint. And deliver means done, right?
Yeah.
That's a very interesting discussion point. I mean, before everything mixed a bit together, and the basic point I also wanted to bring over is to have the backlog according to your sprint goal, right? But it's like a chicken and egg question. So do you first have the sprint backlog together or the sprint goal, right? For me personally, when you have a good, or my experience with what I call good POs, or where it went really smooth, they have their roadmap, then they say, okay, in this sprint, I want to have this goal achieved. And then depending on that together, you create the sprint backlog. You pull in the stories, as you already said, Rodrigo. And
I have a question here.
Yeah.
So if I understand you correctly, the PO defines the goal. Shouldn't it be the team? Shouldn't it be like together in the planning that all of us define the goal together?
Well,
it's a sprint goal. It's not like the roadmap, like the longer planning.
That's certain. I mean, that's certainly also an option. I just come from a different angle. The very specific goal to create, yes, sure. I mean, it's a team's agreement. By book, it would say it's the responsibility of the PO to come up with a sprint goal.
It depends on which book you look. So that's why I'm asking you. Yeah, because I've found different different interpretations, so to say.
Yeah, what if the PO is not technical and then he has some goal that's not really feasible, right? And only the engineers can see that it's not feasible. Then he has to rethink the goal, right?
Well, yes and no, right? Because we is also a hard term, but in terms of the full agile team, the PO is in the lead of delivering value, right? And he has that roadmap. When should which topic come up, released in the product, right? And for me, having that roadmap about topics, there you also have then the sprint goal depending on that roadmap for the specific release you are in, right? Because I mean, in a very great world, after this release, after this sprint, you also have immediately a release. You could also tackle that together. And I believe the roadmap is the basis for each sprint, what it should entail as a content, as a backlog. And then together, yes, of course, you discuss about that specific topic when you realize, okay, we have technical fundamentals not ready. Sure, we need to grab other stories as well.
Interesting. I think we have different opinions there, but that would go too far. I think that's something for another session. I would love to invite POs for that discussion. So because like we are from different areas, but nobody of us is like a PO. So I think we should include them. Maybe that's something cool.
Yeah.
So for the third and last like by book activity you do in the planning is you as a team think already about how to implement, or like making a rough designs, or like this high level discussions. What do you think about that? Do you agree that this is something for the planning? Do you have experience with that? Yeah, so I don't know, Rodrigo, would you like to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I can talk about. What I'm seeing currently is we try to define as much as we can in the refinement so that the planning gets reduced to pretty much just dragging items from the backlog to the current sprint and say, yeah, can we do that? Yes, then the planning is done. But I believe this is a huge missed opportunity, right? Because then you're going to have a lot of impromptu meetings of like more junior developers maybe requesting guidance, or God forbid, maybe the junior developer has a brilliant idea on how to develop something, and then he works for a week only to find out that that's not optimal, and then there's a week of work lost. So that can happen. So I believe it's very beneficial that during the planning, like we discuss as a team, we kind of do like rough design so that everyone gets the chance to grow. Because as senior as a developer may be, perhaps a junior has a fresh eye on something that the senior is so close to like bigger problems that he fails to see the pragmatic approach. That could happen. And we may end up with a better plan on how to achieve the goal. But I have one question regarding that sprint backlog, because we know that the PO is responsible for prioritizing the product backlog. But what about the sprint backlog? What is the contribution of the PO in there, or should the developers make the call? What do you think?
I think like the basis for the prioritization, yeah, that comes from the PO. And then I think like the team should like take this as it is first, and then see, do we have like what you mentioned before, does like the first story and the last story have dependencies? Then it would make sense that we like take up like the last story and like do it together with the first one, or like in parallel, things like that. I think the team should be allowed to do that. That's my opinion on that. Andy, what do you think?
It's perhaps controversial, but we pick as many stories into the sprint we can achieve, right? So everything is done at the end of the sprint anyway. That's a very easy saying and a very easy way to see it. But I think that's the ultimate goal to come to. Of course, there can happen always things. Basically, our main priority is to reach the sprint goal. And when we have achieved that, or all the stories which plays into direction that this sprint goal can be viewed as achieved, those have the priorities. And the others who are not really contributing to it or are stretched goals, they have a second priority. I mean, that's just a different view on the matter, right?
Yeah, agree. Cool. So Andy, did you already share your thoughts on when the team talks about how to implement stuff, doing rough designs or things like that? Because I think we went a little bit in a different direction.
No, for me, until the planning, all what we capture in stories, from my experience, is what should be delivered and not how should it be delivered. And the what, to clarify, of course, I mean, we need to have a rough understanding, every one of us, or of the team. Us is like the team, which steps we need to take to achieve those stories. I am, however, also I have a very favorite idea of a rotating architect, so that there are different that engineers are architects for certain topics, right? And they have the lead there. But really discuss how it should be achieved, for me, is in the next step when we actually pick up the story from the backlog and start to work. That would be in the implementation phase then.
Interesting. I'm from my side, I'm more on Rodrigo's side. I also think like it's a missed opportunity. We could be talking about that in the planning, but probably it doesn't make sense for every little thing. But I think there are topics where it definitely makes sense that like the whole team is there, and maybe not actively contributing to every how discussion, but then we have already shared like the knowledge in one session.
But for that topic, I completely agree with you. But for that topic, I just want to refer to the discussion we had with arrange requirements and point back to that talk, because there we really talked about to introduce the whole team to a new topic and also to show them on how we would like to achieve that. So on a very high level, we already did that in a previous session.
Agree. Thanks for the reminder. And now I come with my next proposal. How about splitting up? So in general, we wouldn't be like in the virtual room. We would be sitting like in one big room together. And then, I don't know, two of us go into one corner and the others go into another corner. And they just use this time, which is already like booked in all the calendars, to discuss a little bit more.
Yeah,
so
I
the
think it makes
people
sense.
who like would pick like this topic, then they can pair up with I don't know, architect who made the initial thoughts. So that would be my proposal. I think that there could be something.
As with everything in engineering, it depends, right?
Absolutely right. And I think that's very good to to make a point here, because I think like for us, what we've agreed on is basically during the planning, it's also like the whole team together with the product owner should like align on and agree on like, okay, what's in the sprint, what is our common sprint goal, where are we confident that we can achieve it as a team, and then if it makes sense, we can talk about the how, or we do it in a late stage. I think that's up to every team how it works best for the team. So thanks for sharing your thoughts and your experience. Another time, Rodrigo and Andy, and thanks for watching us to everybody out there. And I hope you have a cool place, because it's super hot here in Zurich. So yeah, I'll grab a cold beer now. Take care. Thank you.
Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.